What are some uses for Azure Spatial Anchors? There are multiple apps that you can create with Azure Spatial Anchors. A really good use case is anytime that you need to tie a specific information to a specific place. For example, if you're in a big building and if you want your users to find their way around, you can put breadcrumbs around and they can detect these spatial anchors and find their way. Another good use case is if you're in a big supermarket or a warehouse and it's really hard to know where things are, you can put specific product information to specific places. So when you're far away, you can see which way to go depending on your purpose. And these are all business use cases. For a more fun application, check out Minecraft Earth.
Well, hi. Welcome back to the Global XR Conference. Welcome, Atia. My name is Anésio Neto, and I'll be your moderator today. This session is titled Cultural Preservation Using Game Technology, and it's going to be presented by Atia Newman, Associate Professor at Rochester Institute of Technology. And hey, join us until the end of this. We will have a Q&A session for you right after her presentation. And Atia, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Anésio. Hi, everyone. Hello, Global XR community. I am incredibly excited to be here and incredibly nervous as well. But I am looking forward to talking to you about preserving history using for cultural preservation, using game architecture, because today, in this day and age, in a time of climate change and just war and all sorts of things happening, cultural preservation is more and more of a need, and it has to be something that has to be accessible to more and more people as well. So, as you've heard, I am Atia Newman, and I am I'd like to just give you a little bit of background about myself to kind of help you understand who I am and why I'm doing this in general. The key things to know about me are, I'd like to share my screen, actually. There. The key things to know about me are that I am a CG artist, a professor of animation, and a Pakistani Muslim. And I actually grew up not liking history at all. And part of this was because everything was dry and boring and nothing was exciting, and everything seemed very disconnected from my life and my experiences of my country. In fact, I didn't start caring about my history until I ended up choosing the Lahore Fort as a research topic for a school mini dissertation project. So to give you an idea about the Lahore Fort itself, this is where I actually ended up discovering a lot about my own heritage as well. This is a 55-acre citadel that is located on the northwestern end of the walled city of Lahore. And it is an architectural wonder. It contains about 21 individual monuments that are preserved within the boundaries of this of the walls of this fort, and it represents the aesthetic development of the Mughal architecture and art at its aesthetic height. So this means the Mughal forms, the motifs, all of these things that are representative and available in other forts and areas, other locations and sites built by the Mughals as well, are also embedded in here. But this fort in itself actually has new motifs and different representations that are continuing to inform the culture and art and art aesthetic developments of the subcontinent all the way across India and Pakistan and Bangladesh. And this in itself is sorry, a little nervous. But being in this space was a very sort of dramatic moment for me. I started to really understand a lot about myself and my history, and I really started to like look at the number of different things that were represented. This fort made me realize that Islam was not just a culture that was about conquering different places, but also this was a culture that actually invested in art and learning and architecture and beauty. And that became a sort of like second narrative for me, which is one of the reasons why when I started thinking about digital preservation, I actually came to it a little bit sideways by wanting to recreate this fort in VR because I'm a CG artist. And I ended up just learning a lot about digital preservation in the process. So it made me think about how like this fort has been, kind of like falling apart over the centuries. It's been encroached upon. It's been, badly restored in some situations and is now currently being restored in some places. But of course, with 55 acres and 21 monuments, that process is going to be very slow and expensive. And I think it's about time that we actually create this and do put it into a format that would make it a more enduring and more accessible format as well. Which brings me to the Lahore Fort digital preservation process. So in a quick study of like what is happening around the world in terms of digital preservation, I can tell you we have some very, very big companies. Google is teaming up with SCI-Arc. We have governments like Australia, Canada, the European Union, the Middle East, Palestine, Israel, India. Everyone is putting so much effort and energy into preserving these things and preserving sites and preserving sites and artifacts that represent the values of all of these cultures and cultures all around the world. That you would think that this would not be, a very useful thing for me to want to jump into. However, I started understanding more as I researched, because I discovered a local project in Pakistan that was presenting that was also in the process of preserving sites in Pakistan as well. Now, this is a really interesting thing because this process, this preservation process that is going on, is using, and all of the others as well, are using existing technologies like large-scale scanners, LiDAR equipment, 360 photography. They can preserve monuments in data clouds and collections, and they scan giant buildings and locations and objects, and they save everything in incredibly high resolution, which is very rich in detail. However, all of this information gets stuck in these sort of like very big files and is only available on the internet as sort of these very like broken down areas, like very, very degraded images or lower resolution formats that can only be transferred across the internet. And scholars that are interested in studying these monuments will always be hampered by the accessibility to the raw data. They will either be forced to still go there in person, or they will have to have the equipment and the technology to untangle all of the data as well. There's a different perspective as well to this. Accessibility also means, especially in terms of like when you think about how scans are done or how 360 photography is carried out, the viewer or the audience member does not tend to have any control. And when you think about it that way, that means that basically if if you were standing in the hallway of a beautiful space and you wanted to step closer to a building, to a window, or step out onto a balcony, you would not be able to do so unless the preservation team actually thought to preserve that. Sorry. Unless the preservation team actually thought to preserve that or record it. Another way of restoring and sharing digital information is so far in comes about in making digital renders of these spaces as well. Which again, this is a format. This is something put out by the Heritage 360 project recently, and while the work done here is massive, it is, again, not in the hands of the viewer. And therefore, it makes it very hard to actually see what is going on or even control what is going on in general. So this, when you look at it, while it is a very, very powerful thing, doesn't answer some of my key questions. That of being able to like walk into a space or experience it in the way that I experience the fort for myself. Because unless, everyone decides to start traveling now and has a lot of money, nobody's going to get places. Nobody's going to be able to see things. And there's not a lot that we can do about it. And as these monuments continue to degrade, we don't know where to go or how to preserve them or save them. So to that end, this is where my idea about the Lahore Fort project comes into play. Because as a CG artist, I think that we can actually use or preserve site by using game architecture. I want to use traditional game building methods and incorporate scientific standards into those game building methods into the process, and create an immersive experience that will be able to be accessible to audiences globally as well, but will also bring with it that scientific stringency and authority that will allow scholars to research it as well. Now, if you think about it, you may be finding this really, a bit of a reach. But if you think about it, video games are already made to manage high quality content. In fact, they are incredibly efficient at it. And game technology has for years been developing more and more and more. And they have been actually replicating huge existing cities over like decades now. And they've been doing it to a high degree of fidelity. This is a field where technological innovation is constant, and we are always seeing improvements in the processing of high fidelity imagery and gameplay experience. For example, the video game Assassin's Creed has already created a number of locations over the decades. I don't know if anyone's familiar with this or has ever played this game, but I know that they have picked some beautiful locations around the world, or at least in Europe, and they have been able to recreate things so that you can run through a whole bunch of streets and see things. And Assassin's Creed is not the only one. A number of other RPG style games have done the same. So imagine, if you will, being inside a game environment like that and not needing to dodge any arrows or bullets or anything. But instead, if you were able to use that technology to walk into any space and feel like you can actually be there. So let's think about what goes into the work that goes into making a space like that. So as we create spaces, we can, using this technology, we can save very, very big locations. We can save these and put these down into like ginormous game maps that allow viewers to skip to places of interest or meander around as they'd like without any kind of like loss of information. And in fact, they can move closer to things as they need or move away without things lagging, without information being lost in any big format. And because everything is built on different game levels and modular approaches to things, you can understand that like this, the process of building it itself will generate huge libraries of data. And this is data that is, in theory, going to be very, very useful to future researchers as well. because that is essentially the process of like the core reason for preserving history is not just for us to say what our history was, but it's also to allow more people to look at it down the line, for more researchers and more students of history to come and really think about how and why certain materials were used, or why certain layouts were in a certain why things were laid out in a certain way, or how much effort or engineering technology they had in the process of building it. So thinking about this, let's talk about the kind of data that automatically gets created in the process of building a video game as well. First, you have things like materials, you have patterns, you have blueprints, you have measurements. You're able to see a rich and organized set of material that would then allow us to do something like extract patterns and motifs. And because CG is a creation and in itself is something that starts from a place of perfection, each of these elements can be then further refined and then refurbished. In fact, 90% of the time when you do look at something like a pattern, for example, your first instinct, of course, would be to just leave it as it is. But for a fort where, or for a site where things are actually quite degraded just to begin with, it has to be something that has to be processed in a way that we can really, really kind of explore and understand. So, for example, in a situation like this over here is the Nolaka. It is the Queen's Pavilion, and it's situated inside the fort. And it is a marble structure, very, very small. It was built for Shah Jahan's queen, the Emperor Shah Jahan's queen. And in the years, over the years, when the Mughal Empire fell to British colonization, the many parts of this fort were looted, and many of the semi-precious stones that were embedded into the marble were carved out and stolen. However, any artist looking at this can actually come back and extrapolate and think about what type of things already were there, and maybe refine all of those as well. So if we were to say, look at something like a pattern or a little filigree that has been carved out, you can see we can extract patterns, and then we can duplicate them, and then we can reduplicate them, and we can allow that pattern to be recreated and regenerated over and over again. In that sense, we're able to look at a number of different elements of the fort and really start to like understand the core building blocks of what Islamic architecture is. But we do this in a way where we are looking at it entirely not just as artists, but also as scientists as well. And this place of perfection, this element, we can actually like then take it and refurbish huge parts of the fort, which means not only would we be able to look at what the fort is like in its current state, we can actually look at this in a less than current state as well. We can extrapolate and wonder and think about what these things look like in their perfect state, and really understand the number of different aesthetic processes that went into building this project as well. And this method, as we do this, it will also something else that we want to that is very interesting is that the process of building the fort, because everything in CG is built, or at least in video games, tends to be built in a more modular approach, which means you break things down into like small little pieces and then replicate them so that they can be kind of like stacked into different shapes whenever you need. You're actually able to create a database of things like 3D models of things as well. So, for example, if I were to return to this element over here, this particular monument, and the reason for this, you'll understand why I keep coming back here. But you can see there are a lot of different patterns that need to be replicated and can be recreated over time. But also, if you look this pillar base over here is actually repeated a number of times. So if we were to create one element, it could be multiplied in a number of places. But in the process of doing that, we would actually be building the first ever kind of database of 3D models as well that could actually represent a certain aspect of Islamic architecture. So let's talk about the new workflow as well, and just what's been going on in the process of getting us into this digital preservation process. Currently, right now, what I've been doing is I've been doing a lot of outreach, looking for funding and partners, and prototyping and exploring my workflow as well. Right now, while I am currently working alone, I actually have been consulting with a number of experts around the world. I have only contacted a few people. Some people are actually actively working with me and answering questions. However, I am very proud to say that I think this method has sparked a great deal of interest all the way across. The big questions in the process of prototyping, though, are about what exactly needs to be done to really preserve a monument or any aspect in itself. What makes something scientifically acceptable versus just artistically exciting? And that information has to be distilled into an existing CG building process, which is both easy and difficult, because all it means is I essentially have to go from like not just recreating something, but working off of actually making sure to incorporate form like hard data in the process of things. And that is both easy and difficult. Obviously, figuring out what we want to do or how we want to do it can be a really initial struggle to begin with. But I think as we try this over and over again, it will start to like make more sense and will allow us to do a lot of things. So, for example, this over here is the small pillar base that I had previously shown in a number of slides. And this is just me working off of the visual data that I already had from my previous research. This, of course, is by no means an exact replica. It is not, I don't have real world measurements. I'm working off of photographs. However, you can see even with very minimal measurements in my and just photographic information, I'm able to extrapolate a shape. I'm able to put together a 3D model and apply a very, very rough image straight out of the photograph that I already took to what would be a modular piece that could essentially build a VR space. And the advantage of being an artist is that I know that I can come in here and I can fill in all of these spaces where the pieces of the original monument were gouged out. So this for me is a very critical element of this process, because at the end of the day, when we're looking at anything, when we're looking at preservation, we don't want to have it be left in the hands of just anyone, right? We want to be able to do more than just do like a raw artistic interpretation of something. We want to think about what will come next and how other people will be able to access the information and the materials as well. So for my future projections, one of the first things I want to do is return to the fort for an on-site investigation and establish formal collaborative agreements and a formal methodology for preservation as well. This is because obviously none of this should be done in a vacuum, but I also think that this will allow us to to increase access to history and really open up the possibilities of creating a new area of study that combines historical, architectural, and archaeological preservation essentially with CG animation as well. Overall, if you think about it, the advantages of this technology come in a huge set of areas. We can be provided in a number of with a number of advantages. One of the major ones is that a space like this will, because all of the data will already be parsed into collections, it will allow people to really focus in on the areas that they want. Because it'll be a VR space or an immersive area, viewers can actually interact with the space in a more realistic manner. They won't be beholden to a camera or a render or to the power of their internet, or what the internet can handle, or what a website can manage to process. And instead, if this were to be encoded almost like a video game, where you could say either play it on a console or on a computer with a headset or without a headset, you would be able to walk through a space like this, activate interactive graphics and audio and animations at any point, learn information about this space, and also end up coming back and just or enjoying the space as just a Zen area. The other thing that is very, very exciting about this, and my final thoughts actually on this, are that this will actually democratize the process of preservation as well. Because in this way, by using this process, I actually hope to engage with artists and with students, and create a learning exchange between our create a learning exchange in our in how we develop the process, so that our students can learn about it as well. And in fact, so that local areas, local art schools and can come in and actually do their own photography and learn how to like duplicate and create modular sections and segments of areas that they want to do. This process can actually be duplicated beyond just this project. It can be given to artists anywhere, and it can allow everyone to be involved in the process of their research, of preserving their own culture and really understanding how their own cultures were created. This is one of those ways where artists can actually re-engage with their cultures and end up creating new and powerful information that will then be accessible, hopefully, to educational institutions around the world and to non-education institutions as well. Because I think if we are able to preserve history in a way that makes it come alive, then I think it will create a lot of positive impact in the world. So I actually had just prepared for a 30-minute presentation, and that is my talk. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Arya. Was really quite interesting presentation. This is really, really interesting to see how I think this is a common thing globally, right? Right, we're trying to protect what we have in our
Yeah.
countries, and we try to develop 3D models to reconstruct, rebuild, or revive ancient history. One question that I have is, do you feel any kind of support from the government from your country to do this, or do you think that they don't? Not they don't care, but they don't think that this is a good way to show this.
I have not yet reached out to my government about this. This is a relatively new process for me as well, and I'm not a scientific researcher, so I don't actually really know a lot about the process of like involving governments. However, I do believe my government would be interested. I think actually many governments should be interested in doing something like this. Um, I also think that like for a government like Pakistan, or I don't know, governments that may be struggling with resources to struggling with putting resources towards something like preservation, this could be a really good thing just to like apply because we could actually drive students and local companies and local talent to get where they want to go.
Yeah, when I went and ask about the government, I don't know, I'm not saying that the government should pay for that, but
Oh
at
yeah.
least put you in contact with responsible for museums or the owner of collections or something like this,
Yeah,
just to help us to deliver more content like this.
I
Uh,
agree.
y-
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you were mentioning that the reconstruction of using a game. You mentioned that game. What was the game that you mentioned? Sorry, I forgot.
Assassin's Creed.
Yes, of course, Assassin's Creed. And one interesting thing about Assassin's Creed is that they now it's going to be used to reconstruct that Paris that flame over, right?
It's true.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really important. I think I really do believe that this is an important thing that we should do, and we should always keep looking for ways to support this. This way that you present is really interesting because it's making it easier for us to develop and to engage more
Yeah.
people to do this,
Yeah.
and engage even more young people to do this.
I agree, and I that's essentially one of my biggest plans. Some of this is probably because I'm an educator myself, but I mean, I teach students how to make things in 3D all the time, and I know it's not a. I mean, it is a learning curve, obviously, but it's not out of the realm of possibility to teach young people how to make these things. And I think all it really needs is a little bit of intention, a little bit of like coordinated intention. And to that end, I am actually reaching out to schools in that area as well, and actually trying to like establish, this is actually part of my outreach process right now, is to establish an exchange in workflow and information, because realistically we could actually do this as part of like school processes as well, which would cover two areas, which would actually um, teach students about the importance of using their skills to do something that would actually have social good. It would allow students and young people to really engage with their own cultures and then feel like they're making a difference as well.
And what is your first impression when trying to reach those schools and those professors and teachers? Are they accepting this idea? Do you think, or is still going to do this?
I think at the moment, everyone I've spoken to absolutely loves the idea, but the pandemic has actually really slowed things down. Because of course it just suddenly comes down to like time and resources, and then everyone's like, well, we don't know if we can, all hang out together, and there's these like restrictions about when and where you can be, and I haven't been on a plane since 2019. So it kind of has been limiting things, but I'm starting to think about ways to maybe start have ask a team of people perhaps to like be there and start doing the initial data collection as well. But of course, all of this comes down to a lot of luck and a lot of coordination and time
And money.
and money. Yes,
Yeah.
money would be really, really helpful, I think.
Yeah. Well, Arya, let us know how can we reach you out for more information or to help you we do this. Do you have any kind of contact page, Twitter profile or something like this that we
I
can
do.
reach out?
Yes, indeed. I should have actually added it here, but what I can do is put it here right now. A good way to reach me would be probably I do have a Twitter account. I just don't remember what my Twitter account's profile is. Um, but my website is theivytree.com, and my Instagram. Hold on, I have Twitter.
Because usually those kind of developments need a lot of hands to help. Not only money, but we do need artists to develop 3D models, to develop a lot of things involved
Yeah.
in this. And as much help as we might have, it's good for you.
Exactly. And I mean, managing data is one of the big things, over here, in every place, actually, because when you think about it, even when we're talking about I'm going to reshare my screen for a second so you can get my Twitter profile and hold on, share screen. Oh. So this over here is my website and my Twitter account at Yaquad. That was from I made the account during the days when I was before I was married. So you can see over here. But you're right. Like something like this requires a lot of manpower and a lot of just generally like effort, and of course funding. So if anyone is interested or has the resources, I am all ears and ready to play.
Well, that's it. Do you want to mention something else? Do you want to talk a little bit else?
No, thank you all so much for having me and for listening to me and all of my mistakes. I'm pretty sure I rushed through the presentation and glossed over a lot of things. But I swear I'm better when I do this in person. So maybe soon the pandemic will make life a little bit easier and we will be able to do in-person presentations.
Don't worry. What's great? We get all the message, and we could see everything that you're doing, and you're doing great. Congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. So have a nice end of the day. Have a great weekend. Thank you again for being with us, and see you. Bye bye.
Thank you. You too.